Hello, my students. I'm your biology teacher, Cikgu Govins. Our topic today is Chapter 11, Inheritance, and our subtopic is 11.1, Monohybrid Inheritance. Here are the learning standard. Learning standard number 1, describe the meaning of monohybrid cross. Number 2, explain a monohybrid cross based on Mendel experiments. Number 3, differentiate terms related to inheritance. There are genes and alleles, characteristic and trait, phenotype and genotype, dominant alleles and recessive alleles, dominant trait and recessive trait, homozygote and heterozygote, purebred and hybrid, parental generation and filial generations. And number 4, construct a monohybrid cross diagrams. And number 5, determine genotype and phenotype ratio of filial generations in a monohybrid cross. And number 6, describe Mendel's first law. Definitions of monohybrid cross. Monohybrid cross involve inheritance of one characteristics and contrasting trait controlled by a genes. Based on Mendel experiments, Mendel found out that pea plants, Pisum sativum, have 7 different characteristics. Okay, Mendel suggests that the characteristics in the parent plants is passed down to the next generations through a male gamete and female gamete. So this is Gregor Mendel. He is the first person who scientifically explained the principle of inheritance. So he is known as the father of modern genetics. Term related to inheritance. Okay, gene and allele. Gene is a basic unit of inheritance. A gene controls a specific characteristics of an organism. This is the genes, and this is DNA. Gene is in the DNA, and DNA is in the chromosome. Chromosome is in the nucleus of the cell. Okay, this is a pair of homologous chromosomes. This is the gene locus. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gene locus in this homologous chromosomes. So each gene is located on the same locus of a pair of homologous chromosomes. Okay, assuming that genes on this locus control a height characteristics, then this gene is represented by an allele that is control height. Okay, capital letter T control tall trait, whereas the small letter t control dwarf trait. So this is control the dominant trait. This is control the recessive trait. Characteristics and trait. Characteristic is heritable features such as height and fur color. Okay, like this one, height and fur color. This is characteristics. A trait is a variation of a specific characteristic. For example, height is a characteristic, whereas tall and dwarf is the trait for the characteristics of height. For color, the trait is black and white. Okay. And then phenotype and genotype. Phenotype is an observable characteristics of organism. For example, height. You can observe these characteristics. Okay. Genotype is the genetic composition of an organism that cannot be seen. For example, usually represented by a letter. Okay. For example, this one, capital letter T and capital letter T, or and capital letter T and small letter t. This is genotype for tall. Okay. And then small letter t is genotype for dwarf. Okay. And this one, big B and small b. This is genotype for black, and small letter b and small letter b is a genotype for white. Okay, the phenotype is white. The genotype is represented by small letter b and small letter b. Okay. Dominant allele and recessive allele. Dominant allele will express itself and display the dominant trait of the character when both alleles are dominant, or at least one dominant allele present. For example, this one, big T, or at least one dominant allele, big T and small letter t. Okay, it is represented by capital letter. Okay. Recessive allele will only express itself when the dominant allele is absent. Like this, there is no dominant allele here. only small letter t and small letter t. So this is show the phenotype of recessive, okay, dwarf. Okay, it is represented by a small letter, for example, small letter t, and small letter b and small letter b. So this one is the recessive alleles. Okay, this one also recessive alleles. Okay. So dominant trait and recessive trait. Dominant trait is expressed when both alleles are dominant allele or one dominant allele is paired with a recessive allele. For example, this one. This is a dominant trait. Tall is a dominant trait. Dwarf is a recessive trait. Okay, recessive trait is expressed if the recessive allele pair with another recessive allele. Okay, like this. Recessive allele pair with recessive allele. So the phenotype is dwarf. This is the recessive trait. And this one is recessive allele pair with recessive allele, small b and small b. So the dominant recessive trait is white. Okay. Homozygote and heterozygote. Homozygote is when both alleles of homologous chromosome are the same. For example, capital letter B and capital letter B, or small letter b and small letter b. Heterozygote is when alleles of homologous chromosome are different. For example, capital letter B and small letter b. Okay. Purebred and hybrid. Purebred refer to two identical alleles for the same trait. For example, capital letter T and capital letter T and small letter t, small letter t. So this is, we call it purebred, okay? Or we can call it as homozygote, okay? Hybrid is the product of mating between two purebred variety, okay? When homozygous dominant, we cross it with homozygous recessive, we call it hybrid, okay? The products, okay, of the two purebreds, okay? And then parental generations. Parental generations refer to the first generation of two individuals, and filial generation is referred to the successive generations of the parental generation. Okay, so this means the products of the parental generations. Okay, monohybrid inheritance experiments. This is based on Mendel experiments. Dominant allele for tall represented by capital letter T, and recessive allele for short is or dwarf represented by small letter t. Okay, Mendel crossed a purebred tall pea plants with a purebred dwarf pea plants. So this is the purebred talls. This is purebred dwarf. Both are purebreds. This is, we call it homozygous dominance. This one is homozygous recessive. So this is the genotype. Both are capital letter T. This one both are small letter t. So meiosis process. This is the gamete, capital letter T, and this one also capital letter T. This one small letter t, small letter t. Fertilization process. When this gamete fertilize with this gamete, okay, the dominant allele fertilize with recessive alleles. Okay, the genotype is big T, small t, or the phenotype is tall. Okay, when this gamete with dominant allele cross with this gamete which is carry the recessive allele, the product is, the genotype is big T and small t. So the phenotype is tall. And this one also the same, big T, small t. This is the phenotype is tall. This one also tall. The phenotype is big T, genotype is big T and small t. Okay. The cross product between the two purebred plants was the F1 generation, which consisted of only tall pea plants. This shows that the tall trait is dominant, whereas the dwarf trait is recessive. So all the products of filial 1 generation is tall. The genotype is all heterozygous dominance, big T, small t. Mendel then crossed the filial 1 generation by self-pollinations. Okay, this is the heterozygous dominant. This one also heterozygous dominance. Okay, this is the genotype. And meiosis process, this is the gamete, big T, small t, big T, small t. And this is the fertilization process. The genotype of fertilization of dominant alleles with these dominant alleles, both are carry the big T genotypes. And when this gamete fertilize with this gamete, which is carry the dominant allele and recessive allele, the product is big T and small t. This one also big T, small t, because one is dominant allele, one is recessive allele. But this one, both are recessive allele. So this one is homozygous recessive. These two are heterozygous dominance. This is homozygous dominance. Okay. The phenotype is 3 tall, 1 dwarf. Okay. So genotypes is 1:1. 1 is homozygous dominant, 2 are heterozygous dominant, 1 is homozygous recessive. The phenotype is 3:1. Okay, this is 3 tall, 1 dwarf. Okay, the ratio of tall plants to dwarf plants in F2 generation was 3:1. Okay, now I want to show you how to draw the genetic diagrams. Okay, this is based on Mendel experiments. The color of flower pea plants. Okay, the purple is the dominant trait and white is the recessive trait. Okay, this is homozygous dominance. This is homozygous recessive, or we call it purebred purple and purebred white. And this is meiosis process. And this is the gamete, big B, and this one is small b and small b. Fertilization process. Okay, this gamete fertilized with this gamete, dominant allele with recessive allele. So the product is heterozygous dominance. This one also heterozygous dominance. Okay, we settle this one first, and then we go to this gamete. This one cross with this gamete. Okay, so this is the product, and then this one cross with this one. Okay, big B and small b. So all the phenotype is purple flower. The genotype is all heterozygous dominance. And then we self-cross the filial 1 generation, purple and purples. Both are heterozygous dominance. The meiosis process, the gametes, big B, small b, big B, small b. Fertilization process. This one is homozygous dominance. This is heterozygous dominance. And then this is also heterozygous dominant, but this one is homozygous recessive. Okay, so the phenotype is purple, 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 and then this is white. Okay, the ratio of F2 generations is 3:1, and then the ratio of genotype is 1:1. 1 is homozygous dominant, 2 are heterozygous dominant, 1 is homozygous recessive. Punnett Square. Punnett Square can also be used to predict the ratio and probability of genotype and phenotype in the offspring produced. Boxes in the Punnett Square represent different allelic combinations of zygote or offspring that are produced. Okay, this is parental generations. Okay, this is the box, Punnett Square box. When this dominant allele cross with this recessive allele, the product is homozygous, heterozygous dominance. This one also heterozygous dominance. This one also heterozygous dominant, and this one also heterozygous dominant. All are big B and small b. So all the product is purple. Okay, when we cross the first filial generations, Okay, this is the alleles, big B, small b, big B, small b. So when dominant allele cross with dominant allele, the product is purple. So this is a homozygous dominance. When this recessive allele cross with dominant alleles, so the product is heterozygous dominance, big B and small b. So this is heterozygous dominant. This one also the same, heterozygous dominant, big B and small b. And this recessive allele cross with this one also recessive allele. So the product is homozygous recessive. Okay, this is homozygous recessive. So the ratio is 1 to 1. 1 is homozygous dominant, 2 is heterozygous dominant, 1 is homozygous recessive. Mendel first law. Mendel introduced Mendel first law or law of segregations, which state characteristics of an organism is controlled by a pair of alleles and only one of the allele pair is inherited in a gamete. Okay, so this is the summary of Mendel monohybrid experiments. A characteristics inherited from a parent to the next generation is determined by a genetic factor known as genes, and a trait is controlled by a pair of genetic factors known as alleles. A pair of alleles segregate or separate randomly during formations of gametes, so only one allele from the pair is found in the single gamete. During fertilization, a zygote form processes two alleles, one allele from each parent, for a specific characteristic. And last one, fertilization is random. Genotypes combination, which is homozygous dominant, show dominant trait, whereas homozygous recessive show recessive trait. Heterozygous genotype or a combination of one dominant allele and one recessive allele show a dominant trait. Formative practice 11.1. This is the questions. What is meant by pure breed? Pure breed means that the organism's genotype is homozygous, whether it is homozygous dominance or homozygous recessive. The organism carry two similar alleles for each characteristics. Question number 2. In a fertilization between two rats, big B represents dominant allele for black fur, whereas small b represents recessive allele for white fur. If the outcome of the fertilization is 1/4 big B, and half is big B, small b, and 1/4 is small b, what are the fur color and genotype of their parents? Okay, we draw the genetic diagram first. So this is the parental phenotype, blacks, and parental genotypes, which is big B, small b, big B, small b. Meiosis process, gametes, and fertilization process. This one is homozygous dominance. This is heterozygous dominant, and this one is homozygous recessive. So this is filial 1 generation or F1 genotypes. This is the phenotypes, black, this one also black, this one's black, and this one is white. Okay, this is the genotype ratio 1 to 1. Phenotype ratio is 3 purple, 1 white. So both parents have black fur with big B, small b genotypes. Question number 3. Assume that an allele for a tall trait is represented by capital letter T and allele for a dwarf trait is represented by small letter t. What are genotypes and phenotype of offspring from a fertilization between a tall plant and dwarf plants in which both are pure breed? Okay, what is the answer? Okay, we draw the genetic diagram first. Okay, the parental phenotype is pure breed, so both are homozygous dominant, and this one is homozygous recessive. Okay, the gamete fertilization process, this one is heterozygous dominant, also the same heterozygous, heterozygous, heterozygous dominance. So all the offspring are tall. Okay, so so we can also use the Punnett square to draw. Okay, so all are heterozygous dominance. Okay, so all offspring are tall with heterozygous genotypes. Okay, okay, let's try this question. Question number 1, what is the genotype of the offspring in filial 1 generation in a monohybrid cross between homozygous dominant and homozygous recessive? Okay, first one, we draw the genetic diagram, cross of parental generation, which is homozygous dominant and homozygous recessive. Okay, and then the gamete fertilization. So all the offspring are heterozygous dominance. So the genotype ratio is 100% are homozygous dominant. You can use the Punnett square to get the answer. So the answer is A. Okay. Question number 2. In plants, green seed color is recessive allele. Okay. A plant with green seed color was crossed with a plant which is heterozygous for yellow seed color. What is the probability to produce an offspring with yellow seed color? So we draw the genetic diagrams. Here, this is the phenotype. The genotype is heterozygous because the question say a plant with green seed color was crossed with a plant which is heterozygous for yellow. So this is heterozygous for yellow. This is recessive trait, so must be small letter b, and meiosis process, the gamete, fertilizations. Okay, then this is the genotype. So the phenotype is yellow, yellow, green, and green. Okay, based on the genotype here. And so the genotype ratio is 1 to 1. 1 yellow, 1 green, or you can write 50% or 0.5. So the answer is B. Okay. Next one. Diagram 1 shows a schematic diagrams of a monohybrid cross in mice. B represent the dominant allele for black fur and small letter b represent the recessive allele for gray fur. What are the genotype of the parents? Okay, so the ratio is 1 to 1. How to get 1 to 1? We can use trial and error. We try A first. So this is the genotypes when we use the Punnett square. So all are black fur here. Okay, let's try B. B is all black also, but this one is all heterozygous dominant. This one is homozygous dominant. This is heterozygous dominant. Okay, let's try C. C is 3 to 1. The equation 1, the ratio is 1 to 1, but this 3 to 1, the ratio, so it's not the answer. Let's try D. D is 1 to 1. This is heterozygous dominant, and this one is homozygous recessive. So this is white and this is black. Oh, this is gray, this is black. So the answer is D. Okay. Question number 2. A livestock farmer wants to produce the same ratio of black rabbit and white rabbit. Black fur, represented by capital letter H, is the dominant trait against the white fur. Which of the following crossbreeding produce the ratio of the rabbit wanted? So you can use Punnett Square or genetic diagrams. Example here, I use genetic diagrams. Okay, meiosis process, gamete, fertilization, okay, genotype, phenotype. So this is the ratio is 1:1 or 50%, and the phenotype ratio is also the same. So the parental genotype is heterozygous dominant crossed with homozygous recessive. Okay, the answer is D. Next, question number 3. Diagram 3 show a monohybrid cross between two plants. The possible genotype of Z is big T, big T, big T and small t, or both are small letter t. What are genotype of X and Y? X and Y. What is the genotype of this XY to produce this offspring with these genotypes? Okay, so what's the answer? Okay, we can use the genetic diagrams. Okay, this is the products. Okay, so this means the ratio is 1:1 is homozygous dominant, 2 are heterozygous dominant, 1 is homozygous recessive. So mesh with this one. Okay, you can also use the Punnett Square because this is objective question, so you can get the answer faster than if you use the genetic diagrams. Okay, so the answer is A. Okay, thank you. That's all for today. See you in next lessons. Bye bye.